Some carnivore friends I know say that salad is what food eats. I wouldn't go that far, but I do recognize that vegetables can be a problem when it comes to wine because they're far more challenging than, say, meat, where you have the obvious proteins to bind with tannins. You have more austere flavors, more bitter compounds that are really hard on wine. Let's start with wines to avoid. I think the main offenders when it comes to veggies are robust red wines. Think Cabernet, sometimes Shiraz. These full bodied, full flavored wines often overpower vegetables. Their tannins can clash as well. So if you love red wines, what I'd suggest is choosing smooth, soft textured, fruity reds such as Pinot Noir, Gamay, and Sangiovese.
Do you have a thirst to learn about wine? Do you love stories about wonderfully obsessive people, hauntingly beautiful places, and amusingly awkward social situations? Well, that's the blend here on the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm your host, Natalie McLean, and each week I share with you unfiltered conversations with celebrities in the wine world, as well as confessions from my own tipsy journey as I write my third book on this subject. I'm so glad you're here. Now pass me that bottle, please, and let's get started.
Welcome to episode 42. I have some juicy wine topics to chat with you about today, including how do you pair wine and veggies, especially the tough ones like asparagus and artichoke. They're known as wine stalkers or killers. How do you chill a room temperature wine in just 15 minutes? And what does a new study say about resveratrol in wine and combating depression? I'll include links to my pairing tips, the wines I recommend for veggies, and the tips for chilling wine and the new research study on resveratrol in the show notes at nataliemclean.com/42. I'm gearing up to relaunch my course, Get Wine Smart, which will take an even deeper dive into the area of food and wine pairing. And I am so excited about this program. I know you're going to love the experience. I'll be sharing more details with you soon. Before we dive in, I'd love to share with you a spotlight on a member of our podcast community. Bruce Cuthbert from Victoria, British Columbia, wrote on Twitter about episode 39, quote, "Very interesting podcast with stories and books about wine and champagne and much more from Sanishton, Parcel, Vineyard, and winemaker Tilar Mazzeo. We enjoyed your interview with Tilar and are looking forward to Tilar's new book on Canadian wineries." End quote. Well, thank you, Bruce. I loved hearing Tilar's stories about the widow Veuve Clicquot who took over the Champagne house in the 1800s when her husband dies, and then goes on to build it as one of the most successful luxury brands in the world, not to mention inventing the technique of riddling and getting her product through Napoleon's blockade. If you missed that chat, go back and have a listen to episode 37. I know you're going to love that one with Tilar. All right, let's dive into our topics today. We've got lots of great topics to cover. Why don't you wet your whistle now and pour yourself a glass of wine? The first topic I'm going to dive into is wine and veggie pairing. I love tackling a veggie pairing related question whenever I can. The questions I get asked the most are all around pairing. So I'm going to share what I've discovered through pairing wine and veggies. This is something that I share often with my students in my online courses. We really do take the deep dive into wine and food pairing. Now, some carnivore friends I know say that salad is what food eats. I wouldn't go that far, but I do recognize that vegetables can be a problem when it comes to wine because they're far more challenging than, say, meat, where you have the obvious proteins to bind with tannins. You have more austere flavors, more bitter compounds that are really hard on wine. Let's start with wines to avoid. I think the main offenders when it comes to veggies are robust red wines. Think Cabernet, sometimes Shiraz. These full bodied, full flavored wines often overpower vegetables. Their tannins can clash as well. So, if you love red wines, what I'd suggest is choosing smooth, soft textured, fruity reds such as Pinot Noir, Gamay, and Sangiovese. Tuscan Chianti, made from the Sangiovese grape, for example, is a classic match for many Italian dishes with tomatoes, including pasta sauces and pizzas. And I think that Chianti's aromas and flavors are often described as tart and sun-dried, just like the tomatoes. In its youth, Chianti can be tannic, so I prefer to drink those that are 3 to 5 years old or decant for an hour or two. My next tip would be generally white wines do match better with vegetables, but there are some exceptions. As with reds, I think it's best to avoid high alcohol whites, and sometimes their jammy ripe fruit can clash with the zesty flavors. I think summer greens are best enjoyed when the weather is warm, and therefore you want a light white zippy wine. But now we're transitioning, now that we're after Labor Day. It's still okay to drink white, by the way. Wearing white, not so sure, but drinking white, for sure. So let's talk about starchy vegetables. What happens with those? Squash, pumpkin, potatoes, corn. I think those do pair well with more full bodied whites with a bit of oak on them. Let me know what you think, though. I would love to know. I think that California, Chilean, and Australian Chardonnays can match the food's creamy, buttery flavors. Anything with a smoky flavor, such as spinach cooked with bacon, I also think marries well with Chardonnay. There's that bridging ingredient of bacon that is going to connect it with the oaky smokiness of the Chardonnay. Dishes with more robust flavors, including vegetarian casserole, eggplant parmigiano, scallop potatoes, or spinach lasagna. Am I making you hungry yet or thirsty? I think can handle full flavored whites and medium bodied reds. But what do you think? I'm drinking a Chenin Blanc blend from South Africa, which is just gorgeous, which would go with all of those dishes that I just mentioned. Oaky whites, though, I think can flatten the taste of green vegetables, and those vegetables in turn can make the wine taste sort of cloyingly sweet. So, bone dry whites, Gruner Veltliner Vino Verde, Sauvignon Blanc, etc., do pair well with those kinds. I'd also look to Pinot Grigio, Pinot Blanc, even a dry rosé or sparkling. When it comes to dressings and salads, wines with a floral character, like a off-dry Riesling, will do well with simple field greens, the same as why we garnish those field greens with edible flowers. You get that little note there that's quite pleasant, especially milder greens. So when we think greens, there's a whole range from mild to bitter. Milder greens would be romaine, Boston lettuce. They're gentler on wine than the bitter greens and I guess reds like radicchio, arugula, endive, which really can clash with wine's tannins. So the fat in a creamy dressing can often soften the bitterness in the salad. So that's a thing to keep in mind. It can be calibrated with your fatty dressing. That can allow you to drink a richer, more full bodied white than you could, say, with a vinaigrette. So those fattier dressings are going to introduce more full bodied wines as matches than with a vinaigrette. However, some dressings like homemade mayonnaise might be too rich for a lot of wine's acidity. So Caesar salad has pungent tastes. There's salty anchovies, there's garlic, there's lemon, there's parmesan. And I think it just cries out for a zesty white, like the Gruner, like the Sauvignon Blanc, for those strong flavors. Even an Australian Riesling, a bone-dry Australian Riesling, like from the Clare Valley, would be lovely. With vinaigrettes, you can tame vinaigrette's acidity if you're making one yourself with more oil in relation to the vinegar, 5 parts to 1, and that's going to help with the wine pairing, or you can substitute the vinegar itself with a milder acid like verjus. Verjus, it's spelled like verjuice, the juice from unripened wine grapes. Some wineries even produce bottle this, or you can get it in a gourmet food store. Reduced wine or vinegars made from fruit or rice wine, sherry or balsamic vinegar, especially gold and organic, which is the mildest. All of these will be gentler on your wine than a straight up vinaigrette. In addition to tangy dressings, we often have pickled and brined foods such as capers and olives or pickled beets. I love those in our salads. And so these ingredients really do need wines with racy acidity. Olives, for example, not a fan. They have a pungent, salty taste, so they really need a wine that can stand up to that robust flavor, like a dry Fino sherry, which is a fortified wine from Spain. But the dry Finos can come in at only 15% alcohol. It's not right up there, 19, 20% ports. And then you can always have bridging ingredients like cheese and nuts and herbs and bacon bits and mushrooms can really provide an earthy or meaty note to your field greens and bring it together with the wine more easily. I think two vegetables haunt sommeliers. One is the artichoke, and it contains a natural compound called cynarin. It's an organic acid that stimulates our taste buds' sugar receptors and fools us into thinking that everything we drink or eat after we have artichoke is sweeter than it actually is. Even water, it's a great experiment to try. Drink the water, eat the artichoke, then have water again. It makes it sweeter tasting. So you can imagine this plays havoc with wine. Italians have made a virtue of this problem by creating a bitter tasting aperitif called Cynar, and they're very clever at pairing artichokes with austere, bone-dry whites that would make you pucker if you drank them on their own. Verdicchio and Vermentino, two lovely, lovely Italian whites. Dry whites from other regions work as well. Chablis or Aligote from Burgundy, Chenin Blanc from the Loire Valley and South Africa. We were just tasting a lovely Chenin Blanc from South Africa with my course students. We have a private online tasting. We just finished that up before this call because I always pick wines that are coming out in the liquor stores so that they can go get them and then we can taste them together. And I really, really like this Chenin Blanc. I call this the tough love approach to food and wine. You can be mean with acidity, but be kind to the flavor. You can always soften artichoke's hard edge by cooking it slowly in an acid-based liquid such as lemon juice, vinegar, or wine. This decreases the cynarin content, that compound that makes everything taste sweet, because it turns the starches into sugar, and this in turn deepens the flavors and makes them more wine-friendly. It's like you can roast or caramelize it. Give that an experiment. The other wine stalker is asparagus. It too has cynarin, but it has far less of it than artichokes, so its troublesome natural compound is mercaptan, which can smell like rubber or gunflint when paired with wine. And white asparagus is more bitter than green, and purple asparagus is sweeter with a mild nutty flavor. So what do you pair with it? Well, I think one of the best wines, in addition to Gruner Veltliner, is Sauvignon Blanc. I give it the Veggie Wine of the Year award. I think it's absolutely fabulous. Green wine, green food is kind of how I remember it. But also you've got Spanish Albarino, Sancerre, or Sauvignon Blanc from the Loire Valley works well. And of course, anytime you cook things like asparagus or artichokes, you're going to soften their bitterness. Roasting vegetables intensifies flavors through dehydration, just as it does with meat. Grilled vegetables have a smoky charcoal flavor, which can be brightened with lemon zest acidity like Riesling or Sauvignon Blanc. You can char your vegetables, so then you can maybe bring in reds with a smoky or oaked flavor, including like a Canadian Baco Noir, which would be very nice. But I think in the end, of course, it depends on your palate. It comes down to what you like and experimenting. I've kind of thrown out all kinds of ideas. I would love to know what veggie and wine pairings you've enjoyed most in the past. So that is topic 1. That was the meatiest, pun intended, the meatiest topic, veggies and wine. Let's go on to topic 2. I came across this on social media, and it was a website or a report that was saying how to chill a wine in 7 minutes. One that's room temperature, say a rosé or a white wine. I don't think sparkling was in the equation here. That's a different animal. But let's say you've brought home or you have a wine that you forgot to chill or you just bought from the liquor store and you want to chill it fast. In the past, I've heard that putting a bottle in ice water, not just ice, like an ice bucket, but ice and filling the bucket with water cools a bottle more quickly than just ice alone, obviously, than just putting it in the fridge and just putting it in the freezer. Because I think it's that dispersion of coolness through the water, the coolness that's conducted through the water all around surrounding the bottle that really has that chilling effect quickly. But here's a new thing, and I tried it and it worked. On this site, they were sort of experimenting with paper towels and dishcloths. I suggest you take a dishcloth or like a small towel, really sop it wet with cold water. Don't wring it out. Don't get rid of the excess water. And then roll your bottle, a 750 ml bottle, we're talking about a standard bottle, roll it in the sopping wet towel, and then stick it in your freezer for 15 minutes. Now, you might want to check occasionally. I will not be held responsible for any bottles that crack, but mine didn't. And it took it from room temperature to lightly chilled, almost, not quite the way I like it. And that's pretty good. Like for 15 minutes and you're impatient as I am, I think that's a really good way to do it. So let me know if you experiment with that or if you have a better method of chilling wine. I'd love to know. All right, topic number 3, the standard disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. I'm a wine critic who has a selective perception for wine studies that reinforce the fact that I believe wine is healthy in moderation. I'm going to find all of them for you, and eventually we'll talk about all of them. On eatingwell.com, the website for the magazine, they say a new research study shows that resveratrol, the compound found in red wine and berries, could protect against depression and fight stress. Yay. They talk about relaxing with a glass of wine is more than just the relaxation itself. It's the resveratrol antioxidant. This is a new study. By the way, I know we've had lots of studies come out about the health benefits and heart benefits of wine and resveratrol. And lately, the new studies say it's tannat, the compound tannin that's even more powerful than resveratrol. But this one is back to resveratrol. So it's a compound found naturally in skins and seeds of grapes and berries. And researchers at the University of Buffalo decided to see if resveratrol had an anti-inflammatory aspect. And they tested it on mice, happy little mice drinking wine, I guess. They found not only did it help against the buildup of corticosteroid, which looks like cortisone to me, the stress hormone, it eased the body's stress response, which is really cool. The authors of this study say their research lay the groundwork for using resveratrol as a natural ingredient in antidepressants. Cool. Quote, resveratrol may be an effective alternative to drugs for treating patients suffering from depression or anxiety, says Dr. Ying Zhu, co-lead of the study at the University of Buffalo. So, of course, this doesn't mean we guzzle down wine to relax or that it's going to increase our mental health if we drink too much of it. Wine in moderation is the only way to go. But that I find fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Depression and stress in moderation. We had Dr. Ed Miller way back on the show, and he talked about tannat. Tannat is the new thing. The origin of that word is from tannin, and that it's the tannins in wine that give us the most health benefits. I don't know if that's different or connected to resveratrol. Sounds like it's connected. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a wine writer. So those are the three topics. I've got all sorts of things coming up this fall. I'm relaunching a new webinar, 5 mistakes you're making with food and wine pairing and how to fix them. That will soon be available to you. I'm relaunching my Get Wine Smart, which is a paid course. I referred to my students earlier. All of that is in the works and will be launched soon. I would love your feedback. NatalieMcLean.com. We've revamped the whole website. Big undertaking, many months in the making. I'd love to know what you think. Let me know about future topics you want to hear about, and we'll keep this conversation going. Take care. Bye-bye for now. Well, there you have it. You'll find links to great wines in stores now that pair well with veggies in the show notes at nataliemclean.com/42, along with links to that new research study on resveratrol. So what was your favorite tip or quote from this episode? Please share that with me on Twitter or Facebook and tag me at Natalie McLean. On Instagram, I'm at Natalie McLean Wine. If you liked this episode, please tell a friend about it, especially one who's interested in learning how to pair wine with veggies or that study about resveratrol and depression. My podcast is easy to find, whether you search on Google on its name, Unreserved Wine Talk, or on my name. Finally, if you want to take your ability to pair wine and food to the next level, join me in a free online video class at nataliemclean.com/class. I can't wait to share more wine stories with you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this one. I hope something great is in your glass this week. Perhaps something that pairs beautifully with freshly steamed asparagus and melting butter.
You don't want to miss one juicy episode of this podcast, especially the secret, full-bodied bonus episodes that I don't announce on social media. So subscribe for free now at nataliemclean.com/subscribe. Meet me here next week. Cheers.